Yo, this might be the best FAFO backfire that I've ever seen. Trump just pulled an Uno reverse card, yoinked the tablecloth right out from under the Democrats, pulled the rug out from under them as well. They're on their butts, wondering where the tablecloth went, and they have no cards left in Uno. This is glorious, and honestly, maybe one of the best punchbacks that I've ever seen from the Trumpster, and he's got quite a few. Everything I'm going to show you is linked in the description box below. Of course, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, turn this notification bell on, and send this out, guys, because I told you this was going to happen rather quickly. And now Chuck Schumer's blink last night has translated to a very bad punchback. Let's get into this. Of course, you can follow me on X at Braden LOA. Let's just dive right in. I'm not going to bury the lead on y'all. Trump literally just put the Democrats in the position of having to defend the healthcare corporations and insurance companies. You know, those things that the left absolutely despises. It's against one of the core Democrats, or excuse me, core tenets of Democrat religion. Yeah, he's putting them in a position where they're going to have to actually defend the corporations getting the money rather than the American people. Y'all, this is glorious. I told you the clapback was going to come back pretty hard after Chuck's little compromise last night. Here it is. Breaking in a huge move, President Trump calls on Senate Republicans to address the Obamacare subsidies by sending the hundreds of billions of dollars to the people, not insurance companies. Trump is now going to make healthcare for the people versus Democrats' big insurance, and it's a genius move, says Eric Doherty. In other words, take from the big, bad insurance companies, give it to the people, and terminate, per dollar spent, the worst healthcare anywhere in the world, Obamacare. Unrelated, we must still terminate the filibuster. He knows what he's doing, says Eric. Okay, let me translate out this for you real quick. Trump just called the Democrats bluff and said, oh, you want the healthcare subsidies to go from the government to the healthcare corporations, so you want to enrich the healthcare corporations. Well, I'll tell you what, why don't, instead of you guys enriching the healthcare corporations, who are your donors and your friends and your sponsors, why don't we just give the money directly from our coffers to the American people and let them choose their own plan? Oh my God. Here's why this is a big freaking deal. Because Democrats can't do that. They have to have the government be the one that provides and gives you the solution. It's the one that has to have the insurance mandate. It's the one that has to have the subsidies. Because when you have subsidies, people are reliant on you. If you just give money to people to make their own decisions, oh my God, they might make their own decisions. Aghast, egads. This can't be the way. Yes, it is the way. I don't love subsidizing people's stuff. I don't like any of that. But if you're going to go down the road of Obamacare staying around, the ACA subsidies or the Affordable Care Act subsidies still being there, it's a pretty smart ass move to go, hey, instead of giving it from the government to these healthcare organizations, let's give it to the people so they can choose the best thing for themselves. Oh my God. All right, let me jump right over. I'm going to jump out of order real quick, but this is remarkable because he's got liberals, leftist talking heads, the Krasensteins, Chris Murphy, all the Democrats have unified in, we can't do this. Holy God. Here's the reasons why. Listen to this. One, redirecting the money directly to individuals would violate existing law and collapse the entire exchange system overnight. He's talking about writing a law. In fact, Rick Scott from Florida already said, I'll write it. Two, giving people cash instead would destroy the risk pool, driving premiums sky high for anyone with pre-existing conditions. How? You're making a full open market. It's subsidized by the government to the healthcare industry, or it's subsidized by the government to the individual to make their own decision. Where's the bad thing? This is why this is actually a pretty intelligent move, because the left has to say this. Three, by calling insurers money-sucking but proposing to eliminate regulation, he'd actually increase their profits, since deregulated markets let them cherry-pick healthy customers and deny coverage to the rest. What are you on? Four, without predictable federal payments, they say it out loud. Insurers would exit state markets immediately. Such uncertainty triggers premium spikes and loss of coverage, similar to what happened during Trump's 2017 threats to end cost-sharing payments. You mean free market will take effect? That's weird, because free market is going to take effect either way. Five, this is where it gets real fun. The cost of individual insurance plans varies wildly by age and health status. Most Americans couldn't buy adequate coverage with a flat check. It would also create administrative chaos, fraud potential, and inequities. Some people would spend the funds on non-healthcare needs, leaving the uninsured later. Who gives a crap? If the government's giving you a handout of money to buy for insurance, and you can use that money to decide whatever insurance you want fits your lifestyle, fits your desires, that's called personal choice. And you decide to go blow it at a casino, guess what? That's also called personal choice. That's called stupid. If you make a stupid decision, you're going to get stupid prizes. It's not up to the government to make sure that everyone is guaranteed to be insured. If they give them several thousands of dollars to make this decision and insure them, and they choose to use it elsewhere, whose fault is that? This is why it's such a genius plan, because the Democrats have to come out and say, no, people are so stupid. If they spend their money unwisely, then they're uninsured, and that would be terrible. And then this last one. 6, letting people buy their own coverage would reopen the door to junk plans, cheap but useless insurance that vanishes when you actually get sick. So people are too stupid to pick their own plans. Do you see how this works? It's completely insulting. What if people spend the money and make the decision unwisely? Then they're uninsured. All right. Okay. And number 6, well, with the buy their own plan, there'll be junk plans available. They might choose the junk plans. Because they're choosing the junk plans. You see how this freedom of choice thing works? This is what it's about. The Democrats don't want the freedom of choice point. The Democrats want the absolute obligation of people to be in the marketplaces so they can do things like this with the shutdown. It's about leverage. Let's continue. And then I'll get to the fun part. Chris Murphy. Oh, this Chris Murphy. Love him. This is unsurprisingly nonsensical. Yeah, because it takes away your power. Is he suggesting eliminating health insurance and giving people a few $1,000s instead? And then when they get a cancer diagnosis, they just go bankrupt? He's so unserious. That's why we are shut down and Americans know it. No, we're shut down because you guys didn't vote for anything. It's really quite simple. But no, they're going to get their own insurance plan. They don't get canceled when they have cancer. That's not how this works. Everyone knows that, but good fear-mongering, Chrissy. Now let's go to the fun part, like I told you. Watching the Democrats line up to defend insurance companies to get their money when the far left and the Democrats in general loathe the insurance companies and loathe the healthcare companies because they're making profits over people and they're evil and it's a big scam and they don't care if people die. They just want to make money. Well, now the Democrats, per Trump's little announcement and idea here, are fully arguing against giving people money to make their own decisions. And they're arguing to give it to the insurance companies. That's a pretty uncomfortable position if you're on the team D. All right, let's keep on going because they are in a corner. Rick Scott, senator from Florida, totally agree at POTUS. I'm writing the bill now. We must stop taxpayer money from going to insurance companies and instead give it directly to Americans in HSA-style accounts, health savings accounts, and let them buy the health care they want. This will increase competition and drive down costs. That's exactly how free markets work. When you get Obamacare out of the way, all of a sudden free markets are allowed to operate. This is like an anathema to the Dems. Keep going, Dems. Keep shutting down because stuff like this is going to keep on coming up. Lindsey Graham. Listen. If you got Lindsey Graham, you know you're doing something right. POTUS recommendation that we stop sending tens of billions of dollars under Obamacare to money-sucking insurance companies and instead send that money directly to the people so they can buy better health care is simply brilliant. It's a free market solution. I still don't like the subsidies and I don't like the tax dole. I don't like any of those things. But genuinely, if you're going to do it free market style. President Obama promised that families' health care costs would go down by $2,500. Instead, premiums have increased over 100%. The big winner of Obamacare since 2010 are large health insurance companies. Their stocks have risen in some cases over 1,000% because they get most of the money from these subsidies. I'm totally with you, President Trump. Okay. Y'all realize what's happening right now? Last night, I told you Schumer blinked, and the beginning of the negotiation point is whoever loses talks first. He spoke first. He said we want a year-long extension of the Affordable Care Act or the Obamacare. Then Trump fires back the next day and says, tell you what, we're going to give all the money away from the healthcare insurance companies, give it to the people, and make you guys argue to give it to the healthcare instead of them. Y'all, I'm telling you, this is a thing, and it's kind of fun to watch. I'll be honest. This is a pretty smart move. But anyway, that's what I've got for you guys. Let me know what you think. Send this one out. I'll see you on the next one. I'm Braden. See you later.
So they got an incentive just to stack this thing with people, whether it's good health care or not. So what did President Trump say today? He said he recommended to all the Republicans, stand your ground, break this cycle, take the money away from health insurance companies, and let's flow it to the people to give them more purchasing power and stop the money-sucking health insurance companies from taking tens of billions of dollars out of Obamacare. So the Affordable Care Act is not affordable. There is a better way. We're going to insist on that better way. And to my Democratic friends, we're not going to extend this program for a year because that would be unfair to the taxpayer. That would continue a healthcare system that's out of control. It would enrich insurance companies even more. We're not going to do that. We're going to replace this broken system with something that is actually better for the consumer to meet the goal of lowering healthcare cost. So you have to understand, terrorizing the public is not going to get us as Republicans to continue a very bad healthcare bill. We're not going to do it. We will talk to you, President Trump will, all of us will, about how getting better value is possible.
Get this, 35 to 40% of Obamacare recipients that are enrolled in Obamacare never file a claim. Let me say that again. There's 24 million people on Obamacare. 35, 40% of those people never file a claim. These are ghost people. They don't even know they're on Obamacare. They've been falsely enrolled in Obamacare. Now, some people would say, oh, but there's always some people that don't file a claim. It's usually more like 10%. More like 10% of people in a pool of insurance products are not filing the claim. In this case, it's 35 to 40%. And overall, I think we can say that this group of people, Obamacare, is a high-risk group. Big cities like Chicago have pushed people that took early retirement to push them onto Obamacare. These are typically sick people that have been pushed off other plans and they went towards Obamacare. And trust me, I want to address that. That's why we need a high-risk pool that would address those types of folks as well. But the point here is that some 10 million people on Obamacare are not using it, but the federal government is getting the entire premium paid. The insurance companies are getting the entire premium paid by the federal government. So 10 million people, a premium every month. It's like a slot machine going to big insurance companies. So what's the solution? Instead of giving money to insurance companies, let's give it to the American people. Let me say that again. Instead of giving money to the insurance companies, let's give it to hardworking Americans. What a novel idea. Let's turn patients into consumers once again by funding some type of a HSA or a flexible spending account. Call it what you want to. But instead of giving the insurance companies dollars, these premium dollars, let's give that money to hardworking Americans. I did miss one point I wanted to make when it comes to fraud, Mr. President. In addition to address those people that are not that are ghosts, there's ways to fix that. Real simple ones. Number one is to have some type of meaningful ID. Right now, basically, you could give an insurance peddler out there just your name and your birth date, and they can enroll you. They need to go through the same type of regimen that it would take, say, to enroll for Medicare. There's biometrics that we can use as well. But in addition to that, all we would have to do is have a monthly payment. And I understand, it doesn't have to be a lot. You're at 150% of poverty level, you don't have a lot of money. But if there's a there's a $20 payment coming out of your Apple Pay card once a month, you would see that every month. And if you didn't know you were enrolled in something, it would force you to call this company and say, hey, I didn't sign up for this. And we need the highest enforcement levels when people are frauding the federal government like this as well.
And joy to those in despair. Keep our legislators patient in debate, charitable in judgment, and slow to anger as they seek to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies. We pray in your strong name. Amen.
Will you join me in the pledge, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Looks like you might be joining me. He owes you a Dairy Queen.
Under previous order, the Senate leadership time is reserved, and under the previous order, the Senate will be in a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each.
Okay, so this is happening at Southampton Middle School. God bless this young man for his courage. And congratulations. God bless this young lady.
Tomorrow I'm gonna be a US citizen. It makes me feel a little bit more emotional than I thought I would be. It's been such a journey because, as an immigrant, going through the legal process of naturalization and finally being able to, after 6 years of moving here, call myself an American is something that I find it really exciting and also emotional. So I just want to record this moment of how I feel right now and just to share my happiness with you. I want to thank myself before to be able to be persistent and be able to just keep going and go through this whole journey from 0 to 1. And I'm getting there very, very soon. So thank you, the past younger Kimberly. I want to thank you here. And for everyone who's out here in the social media world that's also going through the same process, you're going to get there soon. Just keep going and you'll be there.
Amen to this and congratulations.
And we are live. How's everybody doing?
I don't like it.
Yeah, really easy for someone to say that grew up in a really nice house in one of the best school districts in Texas.
I know, but it's
who has their rent paid for, that is able to go to Europe and on a whim with their sister, who's able to do girl math, who's able to be fun employed. Yeah, it's easy to say that the system's bad when you're doing that because you've never had to work for it. You never got to actually see what happens when you put in the work and get benefits and actually have a little bit of responsibility and actually build something or do anything. You've grew up in privilege beyond privilege beyond privilege beyond privilege. It's only the people who speak like you that grew up in a world where you've never had to do a single thing in your life. So I don't want to hear about that. What a joke.
There we go. Hey, Caleb, you are right on point. And she had to hear that. Hey, that expression that she made, this right here, hey, priceless. Priceless. What he said is right on point. You grew up with all the privilege in the world, the best school, best house, the best mom and dad, everything was the best. You traveling to Europe, you know what it kind of.
Mr. President, I suggest the absence of quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Also Brooks.
And we are
Capitalism is
live.
bad. I don't like it.
Yeah, really easy for someone to say that grew up in a really nice house in one of the best school districts in Texas.
I know, but it's
who has their rent paid for, is able to go to Europe and on a whim with their sister, who's able to do girl math, who's able to be fun employed. Yeah, it's easy to say that the system's bad when you're doing that because you've never had to work for it. You never got to actually see what happens when you put in the work and get benefits and actually have a little bit of responsibility and actually build something or do anything. You've grew up in privilege beyond privilege beyond privilege beyond privilege. It's only the people who speak like you that grew up in a world where you've never had to do a single thing in your life. So I don't want to hear about that. What a joke.
There we go. Hey, Caleb, you are right on point. And she had to hear that. Hey, that expression that she made, this right here, hey, priceless. Priceless. What he said is right on point. You grew up with all the privilege in the world, the best school, best house, the best mom and dad, everything was the best. You traveling to Europe, you know what it kind of reminds me of? Luigi Mangione. Same thing. Hey, Luigi Mangione, how were you in Thailand at a young age, just traveling around, hanging out with the lady boys? How were you able to do that? I don't know what's happening, but it's people like that who talk like that, and their policies, if they ever become successful, like a Zoran, another trust fund baby, when they actually get to the point of being in charge, the things that they implement are not going to work because it's based on their skewed view of reality growing up in the privileged environment. It's not wrong to grow up like that, but just because you grew up a certain kind of way where you were successful does not mean that you know what it takes to become successful in this country. You understand what I'm saying?
Capitalism.
Senator from Washington.
Mr. President, are we on a quorum call?
Yes.
I ask a quorum call be initiated.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. I come to the floor today because we are now in the middle of November, and we know that we have open enrollment in our healthcare plans, and we have consumers trying to make choices, and we need to give them clarity that we can help drive down the costs. As somebody who worked very hard on the Affordable Care Act, and one provision that was different than the exchanges, the basic health plan, I can tell you that this plan has been successful at making a market for consumers at the low end of the market above the Medicaid rate, but up to 200% of the Medicaid rate, and providing them with affordable insurance through something called the basic health plan. It's in 4 states and soon to be in the District of Columbia. And if you think about it, an individual buying on the exchange would probably have to spend about $9,500 to get an equitable silver plan. But these individual states purchasing on behalf of bundles of their constituents are only paying $6,000 for that same plan on an annual basis. So what are we doing, Mr. President? We are basically making a market. I say it's like going to Costco. If you buy in bulk, you get a discount. If you allow these states to buy on behalf of a large pool of their constituents who can't make a market on their own, you obviously can get a discount. So I'm very interested in us continuing and saving federal dollars and delivering good health care on something called the basic health plan. So I'm not surprised that yesterday or the last few days, the world in DC anyway and around the country has erupted into this debate about how do we make healthcare more affordable. That is exactly right. And how do we make sure that big insurance doesn't just capitalize? Now, all of a sudden, both sides of the aisle are talking about the insurance companies making the money, and how do we drive down the cost? So I appreciate that, and I welcome the chance to talk to any of my colleagues. In fact, I saw that the Wall Street Journal had an column today basically saying, quote, Republicans pitch alert alternative to the ACA to end the government shutdown. I was glad to see that. I thought that was a great alternative. I don't know how much it was just discussed at your lunch or how many of these ideas of making healthcare more affordable were discussed, but I definitely think this particular idea by my colleague, Senator Cassidy, has merit, only because I think the senator on the Finance Committee, along with myself and chairman of the Health Committee, has tried to look at ways to make healthcare more affordable, and it deserves some fair consideration. This idea is really something called a health reimbursement account. And since 2008, health reimbursement accounts have been a critical component of one state's Medicaid program, the Healthy Indiana Plan in the state of Indiana. Today, over 800,000 Indiana Medicaid enrollees automatically have access to these accounts and are using them to lower their medical expenses. The state of Indiana pays for the first $2,500 in healthcare costs, which covers a large portion of their insurance plans' out-of-pocket expenses. But the enrollees make monthly contributions depending on their costs to upgrade their healthcare coverage to more generously include things like vision and dental benefits. And one of the biggest benefits of the Indiana Health Reimbursement Account is that the program encourages good financial management and the use of preventative care like annual checkups. So currently, if an enrollee spends less than the $2,500 in medical costs and uses preventative care, they can roll over their remaining account to the next year to lower their monthly medical expenses. This has been a proven path to promoting responsible and measured healthcare spending. It also encourages, as I mentioned, the use of preventative care. And we all know we need to drive down cost in the long run. What happens when we don't have good health insurance, and as we see November and December coming without a real plan for millions of Americans to buy affordable insurance, we are just going to drive up the cost of uncompensated care. The Affordable Care Act has lowered the amount of uncompensated care and helped us lower the cost of insurance overall, but we need to keep going and we need to do more. So I think that these health reimbursement accounts proposed by my colleague, Senator Cassidy, I hope that this article in the Wall Street Journal is serious, that Republicans are interested in floating this idea, and that the Affordable Care Act marketplace coverage has a variety of ways in which we all can take place in a conversation to drive down the cost of care. The health reimbursement accounts already in place in Indiana and here in our federal employee health and benefit program, and also in the DC health exchange as well. So it's not as if there's only one place that is doing this. In those instances, it's a voluntary program, so people can voluntarily comply, voluntarily decide to take the program up and participate in, and as I said, get involved in better healthcare decision and better timeliness of these decisions. So I have no idea, Mr. President, what's going to happen here today, but I know this: there is enough time to talk about good ways to lower the cost of healthcare, particularly for this population that it has to make benefit decisions right now, lower these costs, implement this, and get our government back open. I hope that people will give serious consideration to what my colleague, Senator Cassidy, and others have talked about in this very important area of driving down the cost of care. I thank the President, and I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Iowa.
Today is the 40th day of the government shutdown. It's been so long, a recap is in order. As I've said before, Iowans don't plan their lives around what we do here in Congress. But the Democrats' failure to support a clean, bipartisan funding bill has caused pain, suffering, and uncertainty for the American people. Let's remember, it's Democrats who caused the shutdown and got us into this mess. All but 3 Democrats have repeatedly voted against a clean, continuing resolution to fund government agencies and programs. Even at the Biden era levels, they won't even support funding that their Democrats have voted for and supported for the last 4 years prior to Trump's reelection. All we need is 5 more Democrats. There are not any partisan policy priorities from either side. That's why we call it a clean government funding resolution. Republicans, by supporting this continuing resolution, have sought to put partisan politics aside to keep the government open for the American people, while the Appropriations Committee members hash out full-year appropriation bills under what we call regular order. Now, obviously, for the last 40 days, the taxpayers of this country and every citizen see daily demonstrated Democrats have had other plans other than just a clean funding resolution. They have not put their policy priorities to the side. They've taken the American people hostage by refusing to vote for a government funding unless it includes their partisan priorities. Top of their list is extension of the Biden era COVID subsidy for Obamacare. Now understand, what we're talking about was instituted because we had a COVID shutdown of government and people were hurt because the government decided in early 2020, at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, that 22 million people should be put in the unemployment rolls. That's what happens when government shuts down the economy. So, this is a subsidy Democrats decided to sunset at the end of this year. Now the Democrats shut down the government to continue what was meant to be a temporary program. And something we learn from the word temporary program or temporary taxes is everybody soon decides temporary becomes permanent. These expanded subsidies that go back to the beginning of the COVID era go to big insurance companies for Americans over 400% of federal poverty level. Now, can you believe it? What I mean when I say over 400% poverty level, that could include people making over $600,000 a year. I want to make clear, this expiration is only about the expanded temporary COVID subsidies. So everybody else that depends upon the subsidy for Obamacare, I want to make very clear to them that the premium subsides for individuals and families under 400% of the federal poverty level that existed prior to COVID are permanent law, and those people will not be affected because that permanent law is not being changed by anything that we're debating here today. Permanent law, no change for those under 400% of poverty. Now, Mr. President, writing healthcare policy is our job, meaning the senators' jobs and House of Representatives' job. However, every one of us in this body knew that this deadline that we're talking about was approaching, and we had already made plans to address the policy issues later in the year. Yet, as we find out now for the last 40 days, that timeline was not satisfactory to the Democrats. I've been in the elected office a long time, and taking government hostage and shutting it down is always a losing proposition. It costs money to shut the government down. It costs money to open the government up. And we find out little is accomplished. In the process, government's supposed to be service to the American people. And when there's 700,000 federal employees sitting at home, probably going to be paid because they always have been paid, they can't serve the American people, and the government is not doing its job. So in my view, this shutdown was doomed from the start. But Democrats marched forward anyway, following their leaders into the mess that we now have had for the last 40 days. On day 38, now 2 days ago, so 38 days after government shut down, Leader Schumer came to the Senate floor and unveiled his big plan. On day 38, he came with the Democrats' first plan get the American people out of this government shutdown. Now, why would he wait 38 days? Why would he wait? If you were serious about a bipartisan solution to lower the cost of health care for the American people, I don't believe you would sit idle for 38 days before making an offer. I've shared the pain the shutdown has inflicted upon Iowans, but it bears repeating. I have families calling my office, asking where they can get food. Our food banks are overrun as Thanksgiving is just a few weeks away. Now, I want to give you an example that was reported by the person behind this constituent in the checkout line. One of my constituents, while grocery shopping at Walmart in Marion, Iowa, was left with no groceries for her family when she found out at the cash register that her food stamps were not on her debit card. That kind of uncertainty has real world impacts. The realization brought this constituent to tears, it was reported to me. And why wouldn't you go into tears? Let's just take a moment to think about how you would feel coming home empty-handed from the grocery store and the stress it inflicts on families. Perhaps your kids are crying because they're hungry. Young farmers can't get their loan money from the Department of Agriculture during this government shutdown. And these young farmers are already in an ag economy that's underwater. How are they going to keep their business going? And then I don't know what percentage of the American public flies every day, but it's significant that flights are being canceled left and right because air traffic controllers aren't being paid. That means people who are trying to get to a sick family member or attend a sister's wedding may not make it on time. Law enforcement, including our own Capitol Police that we rub shoulders with every day here, are working overtime and not being paid. The entire federal workforce is not being paid. 3 million people who have families and bills to pay. Now, that's just 4 or 5 examples. Unfortunately, the list could go on. I often say Washington, D.C., right where we're standing now, this town and the people that are in it live and work in an island surrounded by reality. I've been begging Leader Schumer to give just 5 Democrats the go-ahead to join us in a common sense, clean funding bill. Let me remind you that Democrats voted for this same structure of a clean funding resolution at least 13 times during the 4 years of President Biden. So I would ask them, what's wrong with voting for a clean funding resolution during this year and during this shutdown, or to prevent this shutdown? The answer is the American people elected a new president, and that president is not a Democrat. Well, elections have consequences. In a democratic republic, the will of the people is exercised by voters, and congressional leaders must respect that and live with the consequences. It's past time the Democrat leaders cut loose their members who want to work in a bipartisan way. Iowans at my town meetings want more bipartisanship out of Washington. They're cynical that all we do is fight and nothing ever gets done. I try to educate them on how it's not as bad as what they see on TV, and senators really do want to legislate and serve the American people. So let's roll up our sleeves, get the job done. The American people deserve better. I yield the floor.
The dumbest take on TikTok right now.
Let's compare these three, shall we? Billie Eilish, 23 years old, just donated $11 million to help make sure Americans don't go hungry. Her net worth is $50 million. That means she gave away 22% of her net worth.
That video received 5.8 million views. Billie Eilish did not give away 22% of her personal net worth. That 11.5 million is from her tour revenue. And specifically these Changemaker tickets where her fans can buy a special, more expensive ticket. It's like $80 to $120 more. And that is where she's getting the $11.5 million. It's like when you go to the grocery store and they ask you to round up for charity. That's what Billie Eilish is doing. Was it from her personal net worth? No. But of course her fans are like, The
Capitalism is bad. I don't like it.
Yeah, really easy.
And as we've noted here every day, the sole reason for the entire federal government being shut down now, the sole reason for all the American people suffering all this pain and hardship is because of the fear of political retribution from the far left activists who run the Democrat Party. That is the motivation for the shutdown. It's never been about any policy issue at all. It was only so that they could show a fight and try to show that they're tough to this rising far left activist base in the party. The old guard has been repudiated, and the radicals are taking over the Democratic Party. We have evidence now every day. Yesterday, Jared Golden announced he would not be running for re-election in the state of Maine. He's a moderate, and he has no place in his party anymore. And then this morning, you saw the headline. Former Speaker Nancy Pelosi has now announced her retirement this morning. That is a very important sign that I hope that you all will delve into. Even the famous San Francisco liberal is not far left enough for the neo-Marxists. We commend her for her services. We all do, everyone who serves in Congress, but there should be a lot written about that. And as we've noted here every day, the sole
Cyrus, Pritzker says he's not going to call Trump.
No, because Black lives don't matter. That's what it basically comes down to. That's what we're learning. Black lives don't matter. Listen, I get, and Jesse makes a great point where he's like, what is the end game? Who is benefiting? Why would you not want this help?
Senator from Kansas.
You've lost your cities.
Mr. President, thank you.
Your police department
I've
is
introduced
depleted.
legislation
You've defunded it. Did a
is
good.
introduced on an annual basis. We've done so again this year to make certain that the rate of disability compensation and other financial benefits from the Department of Veterans Affairs for veterans and military survivors keeps pace with the rate of inflation. The annual Veterans Compensation Cost of Living Adjustment Act of 2025 will increase certain VA benefits by 2.8%, including disability compensation, clothing allowances, and dependency and indemnity compensation for surviving spouses and children. That is to better reflect the changes in the everyday cost of living and align with the annual benefit increase by the Social Security Administration. This adjustment allows veterans and their families to have the peace of mind of knowing that their VA benefits will keep up with our nation's economy and that VA can continue delivering support for those who have served while alleviating the stress of financial uncertainty due to circumstances that are out of their control. In addition to the Cost of Living Adjustment Act, the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs has also reported out Senator Rosen, the senator from Nevada's Lactation Spaces for Veterans Moms Act, which would make certain that each VA medical center has an appropriate space for veterans' moms to pump or to breastfeed. Women's veterans are the fastest growing patient demographic, and we must make certain that VA facilities can meet their needs. Mr. President, I therefore ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of calendar number 202 S2392.
The clerk will report.
Calendar number 202 S2392, a bill to increase effective as December 1st, 2025, the rates of compensation for veterans with service-connected disabilities and so forth and for other purposes.
Without objection, the Senate will proceed to the measure.
I ask unanimous consent then that the bill be considered read a third time and passed, and that the motion to reconsider to be considered made and laid upon the table.
Without objection.
And also, Mr. President, I therefore ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to immediate consideration of calendar number 200 S778.
Clerk will report.
Calendar number 200 S778, a bill to amend Title 38 United States Code to require a lactation space at each medical center of the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Without objection, the Senate will proceed to the measure.
Therefore, I ask unanimous consent that the committee reported substitute amendment be agreed to, the bill as amended be considered read a third time and passed, and that the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Who are you? Who are you? Without a job title, without the name, I'm talking about like the internal story of who you are. The part that kind of whispers to you in the dark, the one that decides what you deserve in life. It decides what's possible, what you are allowed to want. That is our identity. It's pretty much the control panel for all of the decisions that we make throughout our life. So if we want to learn about persuasion, persuasion is not about convincing someone of something new. It's about giving them a new story. So it's a story that their brain is desperate to believe. But first, I want to tell you about the brain's permission system. Most of your brain is kind of like a little bouncer at a nightclub. Nothing is going to get in there without permission, but that permission is not logical. The permission for our brain is emotional, tribal. It has full alignment with our identity. So when somebody hears a message that conflicts with who they believe they are, it physically hurts. And we call that cognitive dissonance. It is a stress alarm in the anterior cingulate cortex. Your brain is kind of scrambling to shut it down by either changing the behavior that's contradicting or rewiring the identity to match up with it. People almost never change behavior first. They recode the entire story to end the pain. They say something like, yeah, but everyone else does it. It's not lying, it's just reframing. Or I had no choice, or I was just following orders, or I was doing what everybody else was doing. And that's dissonance resolved. Identity stays intact, the dissonance gets resolved. So now imagine weaponizing that. What if you could create dissonance on command and then offer that person a way out that just happens to align with your objective? This isn't persuasion, it's identity hacking. That's really what we're dealing with here. So here's how this works. You start by triggering the three most fragile identities that people carry. I'm a good person. I am not easily fooled, and I know who I am. If you can create tension inside of any of those, just a little spark of tension, the brain starts scrambling to put the fire out. And that's what's happening inside your head. But you've already rapport with somebody. You've shown confidence with somebody. You've embodied this calm composure that we talk about so often. You become the exit, the permission structure. The second point here is your identity is elastic, but it's only elastic with safety. Identity only shifts when it feels safe to do it. So the brain has this threat radar. It's called the amygdala, and another part called the locus ceruleus. And if you try to persuade somebody while their threat center is activated, you're essentially just talking to a wall. But if you present as somebody who's calm, you're congruent, you're authoritative, you have composure, their amygdala stands down. It says, this is not a threat. I can completely relax here. Your voice becomes this voice of reason for someone. And that is why composure matters more than charisma. Charisma might grab attention, but composure is what grants permission. Composure is what says, you can change and I'm still going to be here and I'm still going to accept you. That is the true power of being very, very good at persuasion. So the technique here is something called the identity trap. And let's say you want somebody to take some kind of action. You want them to maybe buy something, maybe to forgive somebody, maybe leave a bad situation, maybe leave a cult that they frickin' joined. Here's the play. So the first would be to affirm their current identity, to make sure they know their current identity is on good ground, and saying something like, you're the kind of person who thinks for themselves. I know that you're always doing that. Next, we introduce dissonance. And then we say something like, but I don't know what it really is, but you've been kind of living by somebody else's script. That's cognitive dissonance. Then we build some kind of emotional gravity into this whole thing. And we say something like, you feel it every time that you hesitate, the tension in your chest. That's not fear. It's your real self trying to break through. And we offer something like an exit. And the exit might be, you already know what needs to happen. The only thing left is permission, and you have it now. And if you watch what happens, the shoulders drop, the eyes blink less, the breathing deepens, the brain is rewiring itself. And this is all happening in real time. The final, most powerful weapon is, most people think persuasion is about pushing somebody or like manipulating them, kind of like pushing them into this new idea. It's absolutely wrong. This is about letting somebody step into a new version of themselves because they feel safe doing it. True persuasion is permission. That's it. So you're creating that safety with composure, with empathy, and with authority. And we're manufacturing that little tension there with some kind of dissonance, the bridge between who they are and who they want to be. You're not forcing change, you're allowing change. And that's the difference between manipulation and mastery. The next time you want to change somebody's behavior, don't search for all these clever little tricks and words and tactics. Let me get a script. Don't try to out-logic them. It's never about logic. So instead of doing all of that, go primal, go back to the ancestors. Speak to who they think they are. Create just enough dissonance to spark a little discomfort. Become the safe haven for resolving that cognitive dissonance, and then give them permission. All of these skills compound over time. It's a lot like learning to play an instrument. There's no 20-minute video on the entire internet that will ever be created that's going to allow you to play guitar. That instrument that you decided to hear, that you're here tonight to learn to play, is the human brain. You are opening a door inside their brain they didn't know was there, and then you're giving them the key so they can come back to it. This is true power. This is how revolutions start. It's how love stories are written. And all that happens in the span of a single breath. What I want to try to do tonight is give you something that I pray and I hope will stick inside of your brain for the rest of your life. And I'm going to give you something that is going to flare up your ego's defense mechanisms a little bit, but I want you to promise me, are you willing to suspend any of the ego stuff that comes up, of any of the that's not me, any of the I would never do that, any of the I'm way more perfect than what he's describing? So as we kick this off, I want you just to think about the one thing that you are ashamed of, the one thing maybe you hate yourself for it the most. You don't need to say it, you don't need to type it in. And what if I told you that carrying the shame or guilt about that makes you a bad person? And that shame is not morality. It's cowardice. It's absolute cowardice. And if you keep clutching onto it, people are not going to get a gut feeling to trust you. You're not going to be followed easily unless you fake it for the rest of your life. And you're never going to be free. This might sting a little bit, but if you don't walk away changed tonight, I have failed. So let me first tell you a trick that your brain is playing on you probably right now, if you're willing to admit it. And some people aren't ready for that, and that's okay. But it convinces you that guilt or shame equal I'm a good person. It equals goodness. So I feel terrible, therefore I must care. I must be a decent person if I feel like shit about this thing that I did. That's a lie. That's absolutely, completely false. Guilt is what I will call masturbation of the ego. It keeps you the center
of your own pity party, and you can kind of replay that little loop. You rob everyone around you of a stable leader or a present parent. If you've ever thought like holding on makes me better, then I will issue you a huge congratulations here. That thought is why people don't trust you, and you've just uncovered it. And here's the number one thing I want you to write down right now. If any of this has touched you or like, oh shit, that hurt a little bit, write this down, please. I am using pain as a disguise for virtue. So if you could kind of picture this in your mind, like just form a mental image of this. Your best friend comes to you today. Your best friend shows up and is like, hey, I've got to confess something. They confess the thing that you're holding against yourself. They say the same thing that you're holding back and pretending not to have. Would you forgive your friend? So why don't you forgive you? Drama is easier than discipline. Guilt is super comfortable. It's predictable. Forgiveness demands change. So here's the paradox right here. And this is the true paradox with all of this stuff. You think that holding guilt makes you good, but it just makes you selfish. You get addicted to the feeling of shame because it becomes a little identity. I'm ashamed of that. That makes me a good person because I have good morals and good values. Shame is safer than stepping into authority. The authority triangle, if you've studied that in NCI, says that confidence, composure, and discipline are the big tripwires for power in life and to have power in your life, not over others, power. People respect power, and that's, you get over others because you have power over yourself. But shame is the complete hydrochloric acid that you're dumping on all three of those things. You cannot be in composure. You can't be composed while you're bracing against an old memory. You can't be confident while your inner monologue is saying, I'm not worthy of this, or I don't deserve this stuff. And you can't have discipline in your life when your energy goes into hiding skeletons. I grew up in a life where like our entire existence was about hiding skeletons, make sure nobody sees the skeletons. So every ounce of guilt or shame that you're carrying is a signal that says, do not follow me. Don't follow me. I'm not safe. And people pick it up 100% of the time. If I could ask you to do something, take that thing that you thought of at the very beginning. That one thing that came to mind of like, here's the thing I hate about myself. Here's the thing I feel shame or guilt about. And feel it in your chest for a second. Like, let it get a little bit uncomfortable for just a second. And notice the way that automatically, without me even saying that you need to do this, your jaw is tighter. Your breathing is a little more shallow. The way that your body shifts a little bit. Maybe your rib cage kind of comes down to protect your abdomen a little bit. Now hear me. Nothing about what you felt just now made you a good or noble person. It doesn't help anyone on this entire planet. Nothing you did was virtuous. It was selfish to keep it alive inside of you for this long. And it was taking away from how you could have benefited other people. I forgive you. Say it right now. Not the world, not other people, you. Do it out loud, do it in your head. But I want you to actually feel those words, not just like saying it like it's a magical Harry Potter spell. Feel those words really quick and watch what happens in your body. Your shoulders fall, your face relaxes, your jaw loosens up, your breathing gets a little bit deeper. That's what authority feels like when it's not leaking. And the only person who could have given it to you was you. And here's the big secret. You don't need to earn forgiveness. And I'm going to say that twice more. You do not need to earn any forgiveness from anyone. You do not need to earn forgiveness. Your job is to weaponize it. If you get to a point of radical self-forgiveness, that's not like having mercy. That's ammunition. I'm collecting some kind of ammunition to where I can fight what I need to actually fight, the things that make a difference in my life. All of that fuses you back together. It shuts down all these blind spots that blind us from the entire world. It makes you magnetic because people finally see wholeness, a real you, instead of a fractured version of you. The crazy part of this is the moment that you forgive yourself, it needs to be at the point of somebody might think you're crazy. Someone might think that you're a little unstable because you forgive yourself for that thing, that one thing that you probably brought up, and then you changed it because you wanted to think about something else because you were ashamed. That thing. You need to be delusionally self-forgiving because there's no virtue to it. You are not a good person. You are not virtuous for carrying around shame and guilt. It does not make you a good person. And the moment, this is what's the weird part of this life on earth, whatever the hell this planet, this reality is, the moment that you completely forgive yourself, people start forgiving you too. And it's absolutely not because they decided to forgive you. It's just because humans follow wholeness every single time. You might have watched my episode with Joe Rogan a few weeks ago. The reason he's got like 6 times the amount of viewership as like CNN or any of the major news people is because there's wholeness there. It's like he's not narrative based. He's not scripting a response to get to make you see him a certain way. We're thirsting and starving for something that's real. So you can't command other people until you reclaim the parts of you that you abandoned and that you got rid of. So tonight, hopefully you got a claim of one little thing, like some guilt or shame, and hopefully that's burned and gone. It's total bullshit. It's all fake. All the guilt and shame stuff, it's all fake. I'm here to tell you, maybe I'm you in another version, in another reality, in another dimension. You asked me to say this to you. Wake up. It's not real. It's fake. All the stuff that you've been programmed with is fake. You're supposed to have fun. It's a simulation. It's a game. You're made to have fun. You're made to enjoy it. And you're made to do good and be good to other people. So if you think you're waiting for permission to let all that shit go, you just got it. I gave it to you. And the second you just uncontrollably, unbelievably just forgive yourself and be a good person, the world forgives you too automatically. I want you to walk out a little more whole than you came in, more whole. Because if you are a fragmented leader, you don't get followed by people. You want to look, all the people that you look up to, they're radically self-forgiving. They're the people that are truly doing that. And I'm not saying this as a freaking guru or anybody who's got like life figured out. I have more uncertainty than I have certainty. But I'm definitely certain about this one thing, about human behavior. You do not become a better person by holding on to a bunch of shame and bullshit. That's all. Just forgive yourself. It's supposed to be fun. I am you, and you asked me to tell you this. Wake up. It's not real. You're supposed to have a good time here. If you've had that feeling like your life doesn't belong to you, something is off, maybe the choices, the emotions, even the arguments in your head aren't really yours. That is not you being paranoid at all. That is the program running. And the crazy part about all of this is It didn't start with your phone. It didn't start with TikTok. It started well over 100 years ago in a quiet office with men in suits mapping out the human mind like a machine that they could rewire. But here's what almost nobody understands. There is a reason that outrage feels addictive. There's a reason that despair feels normal. There's a reason that you wake up with dread and blame yourself for it. It was designed. And the moment you see how, you can't unsee it. So let me rip this open for you. Where did all of this programming really begin? It was a quiet office in London in 1921. This is the Tavistock Institute. They said it was about helping soldiers heal, and it wasn't. And once they cracked all of these things open that they did there, the experiment never ended. Officially, Tavistock was about treating shell shock. This is what they used to call PTSD. It was trauma therapy. It was a beautiful cover story. But what they actually found, trauma doesn't just break people, it softens them up, makes them pliable. They were not fixing soldiers like they told everybody. They were testing civilians. They were running war psychology on entire populations. Grief, confusion, and fear. Tavistock used all of these things like tools in a toolbox. Once you know which lever makes a herd turn into a stampede, you don't need speeches or ballots anymore. You just pull the lever. So after World War II, Tavistock moves into media and education and government. Its fingerprints are on NATO, PSYOPs, Cold War propaganda, and the actual birth of mass advertising. Then this guy comes on the scene a little later. His name is Edward Bernays, and he's actually Sigmund Freud's nephew, which is super weird. But instead of analyzing dreams and stuff like that, he turned the unconscious into a marketplace. And Edward Bernays is the reason that women smoked in public. He branded cigarettes as torches of freedom for women. He's the reason that we link bacon and eggs with breakfast. It was an ad campaign. It was never a tradition at all. Edward Bernays is the reason that Guatemala's democracy got overthrown. He sold it as fighting communism so that this company called United Fruit could keep their plantations. And he weaponized desire. He made war fashionable. He made democracy emotional. A few years down the road, we have this Operation Mockingbird program that comes out through the CIA. The CIA figured out the easiest way to control a country was by headlines. They thought it was about threats and war and the potential for some kind of bomb being dropped, but it was just headlines and news. That's all you needed to control a whole country. Operation Mockingbird put CIA operatives inside the biggest newsrooms in America, not just whispering in journalists' ears. They were writing the actual stories. Some of them were even newscasters. They were planting every single angle that they were told to plant. And by the 70s, over 400 journalists were on the payroll of the CIA. Anchors, editors, columnists, people that our parents trusted, that were trusted by almost the whole country. So now we've got the CIA's infiltrated the entire news media, and along comes this other program called MK Ultra. The CIA went full-blown mad scientist. They studied these weird experiments on people, some of them even unwilling, that included electroshock therapy and sleep deprivation in high doses of LSD, which is a hallucinogen, and even sensory isolation. It was about breaking minds completely open in the cleanest way that they possibly could. And it was about erasing identity. Keep that in mind. In the 50s, they were becoming experts at erasing people's identity. And in Canada during this whole thing, this guy named Dr. Ewan Cameron, he ran patients through this thing that he called psychic driving. And he looped recorded messages into their ears while blasting them with drugs and shock therapy until they forgot their own name. And some of the patients there even forgot how to use the bathroom and how to walk and who their family was. When the files leaked in 1970, the public kind of gasped and freaked out. But by then, the experiments were already baked into the military and media playbooks around the entire world. The tools worked exceedingly well, and the ethics to them had no bearing on whether or not they should keep going. Fast forward to today. They used to use pills. Now they use pixels. And the pharmacy they're using is in your brain. It's all your own neurochemicals and your own neurotransmitters being used against you. And the dosage of these things is measured in how many headlines and hashtags and notifications and videos that you see. Tavistock engineered this confusion. Bernays taught them how to sell it. Mockingbird made it gospel to the entire world. And MK Ultra buried the witnesses. So now the experiment lab isn't in some weird underground bunker. It's in your frickin' pocket. So on your phone, every swipe, every pause, every time your eyes linger 1 second too long, your nervous system is being mapped out by an algorithm. And it's not for your benefit whatsoever. It's for theirs. Algorithms don't just recommend a bunch of stuff to us. They condition us. And this is beyond proven. They learn what spikes your cortisol, your stress chemicals, what makes you flinch, what makes you pissed off. They feed you more and more until your nervous system belongs to them. You're being taught what to care about, what to hate, what to fear, slowly, without any friction, until the thoughts in your head aren't even yours anymore. Outrage is the cheapest lever you could pull in a human being. That's why everything online is on fire. Doesn't matter what you're mad about, just that you are mad. Because anger glues your eyes to the screen. And while you're locked in reaction mode, something deeper, a lot deeper in your brain is being carved into you. If you look around right now, nobody is okay. Anxiety is baseline. Kids are depressed before they even hit puberty right now. Adults are medicated just to function. And that low dread or that weird feeling in your chest, people call that like personal failure or anxiety. That's the program working exactly as it was designed. A distracted, exhausted, divided population is a population that cannot resist. The mental health crisis is not accidental. It's the exhaust fumes of this machine. So what happens at the end of this? We are all programmed to chase validation and followers and aesthetics and power and status. And even when people hit every single target, what happens? They feel nothing. The system doesn't need you dead. It just needs you numb. It needs you to be busy, blaming yourself until you forget you were anything more than a user profile in some behavior experiment. And if you're still here, something in you already knows. And maybe you can't explain it. And maybe I can't either. I don't think that's paranoia at all. I think it's memory. I think the part of you that never signed the contract is paying attention. It's a part of you that never forgot. So none of this is about finding yourself. This is about stopping the chase and stopping the performance, stopping the endless need to be what the system rewards. You are not outrage. You are not your social profile. You're not the algorithm's predictions. The very second that you stop feeding the machine, you start starving it. And once you remember that, you can't go back. And you've probably felt it most of your life, like an itch in your gut that none of this crap makes sense. The way that we live is upside down and it feels backward and fake. If you've felt this at all, I'm here to tell you that you were right. This was never your life. It was built for you. It was all scripted. and installed. Your real life is still here. It's quiet, it's patient, and it's waiting for you under the noise. And now that you've seen it, the only question left is, who are you without the script? That's the real you. Because the system is starting to crack, and you know it. And your real life is waiting.
So now, people can be listening to AI artists and AI music, and they don't actually know it. And this is the problem that, even with the video that I made recently and the Ella Scott example, people can be listening to that and they'll have no clue that it's AI if you're just listening to it through earphones. How do you know that's AI? People can, I don't know, email the government in the UK, email governments wherever you live and say, we want to have AI disclosure on the audio, because that's what we're listening to. So, I mean, writing down that, oh, this is created with AI, if you're not reading it, how do you know when you're listening to it? People can then go and check out the official website, which will also be AI and have AI images on it. And they've got their songs there. People can buy thinking it's a real band when it isn't, or a donations page or tab that people might donate to, not knowing that the whole thing is fabricated, it's AI, but you can't tell by listening to it. So yeah, that's what I would be pushing for in the future, because that's the only way for people to know when they're listening to something, is for them to instantly be told AI.
This is going to rip a hole in your brain that you cannot plug. It's going to permanently change the way that you see stuff. There's so many symbols and signs that human beings are experiencing a simulation of reality. These simulations are not just mediations of reality, and they're not even descriptive mediations of reality. They're not based in reality at all. This is your everyday life. This is your life. The shirt you're wearing right now, the room that you're sitting in. The boundary between real and something that's unreal has been permanently blurred, as in we cannot go back. We cannot return to the original. Jean Baudrillard is famous for having written this incredible book called Simulacra and Simulation. My favorite quote: "We live in a world where there is more and more information and less meaning." Have you really just ever felt like your brain is constantly being hit with facts and updates and opinions, but none of it really sticks? In our world of endless content, real meaning gets lost in that noise. Baudrillard saw this coming a long time ago, and it sounds crazy. Shouldn't more knowledge, access to news and history and science make everybody smarter and better informed? Baudrillard's answer is kind of tucked away inside this collapse of the real into the simulation. One of Baudrillard's biggest ideas is that we're no longer dealing with reality. We're dealing with simulacra. And when he talks about simulacra, these are copies of a world that doesn't exist anymore. Everything kind of refers to something else. So in the past, a picture captured of a moment of real life. But now the photos that we take are filtered or AI generated or staged just for social media. They're not records of reality. They're designed representations of how reality should look. A painting of a king used to refer to an actual monarch. And a king nowadays is an emoji, refers to no one. It refers to an idea. It's a simulation of something that cannot point to what it's referencing. A hyperreal world does not distinguish between a war where people are getting killed and a viral TikTok dance. Both of those exist as content, and meaning becomes flattened. If a memory of an event is shaped entirely by news clips and social media, do we even need the event itself anymore? What should seriously terrify you is that we're already at a certain point where it doesn't even matter if something is real. It only matters if it feels real. Simulation is a process that begins with a model that generates a sign or a symbol that's meant to represent reality. So as the process of simulation advances, these signs lose their connection with the original thing that they were meant to represent. The signs take on their own life. They become what's called simulacra. They're copies that have no original. It's a simulation of itself. There's 4 levels of simulacra. This is a faithful, or what you would call a true, copy, where the representation is clearly an artifact of a real and unblemished original. So this is a perversion of reality here. So either intentionally or unintentionally, we're distorting the image of the original. They still have a link to the original, but it's been changed. These mask the absence of a profound reality. and they create a facade that looks real or natural, but it's not tied to any original form. These have no relation to reality at all. They are their own, what he calls simulacrum. Here, this line between like real world and the world of simulacrum becomes indistinguishable. You cannot tell the difference between fourth order simulacrum and reality. There's a fascinating story in the book. It's about this tribe called the Ifuago people. When the ethnologists first set foot in this Ifuago territory, they were just captivated by their social systems and these intricate rituals. And the scientists came to document the authentic Ifuago way of life. But here's where things get really interesting. As the Ifuago people became more and more aware that they were being observed, they started to act a little different. The rituals became way more elaborate and started changing and modifying themselves. And they started wearing a lot more traditional clothing a lot more often. So the tribespeople were now performers, acting out an idealized version of their culture to the scientists. So all of these works that they put were published around the world. So over time, the Ifuago tribe themselves started referring to these academic texts to understand their own traditions. So new generations that are now influenced by these published works adopted these documented customs as the new standard of culture. The line between real and represented was gone. Let me give you another example here of this fourth order simulacrum. How is Walmart a simulation? It's this giant sprawling space. It offers everything that you want: medicine, hairspray, clothing, groceries, whatever it is. It's not just a supermarket. It's what this book refers to as a hypermarket. Everything becomes a sign. Everything's a representation of something else. The produce is clean, it's uniform, it almost appears artificial. You go to a farmer's market, vegetables don't look like that. So what's natural is made into something simulated to reconstruct our expectations. But why do we have that expectation? Because we saw it in the media, which was a simulation of that thing. Let's go to Disneyland. It's not just an amusement park. It's a super intensified simulation of aspects of the world that we inhabit. In their bluntness, as an overt space of fantasy and commerce, it becomes more honest than the outside world that pretends to be real. So Disney World serves camouflage that the rest of the world is also a stage. It's also artificial. If you ask a random person to draw a picture of a princess, what will they draw? That's our definition of real. That's in your head. You define what a princess is based on a simulation. The simulation takes over around age 2 or 3. So the hyper-real becomes more important than things that are actually real. Think of your social media profile right now. It's supposed to be a reflection of you. But how often is it a carefully curated presentation for all of us? So the you on social media, with your complexities, your flaws, they're all smoothed out. This is a representation overtaking the original. You become a simulation of yourself. Baudrillard, in this book, argues that our consumer society is a hyper-real world where the consumption of images and signs and symbols don't just mask reality, but they become it. Take the brand Nike, "Just Do It" tagline, have transcended physical products. Think about Mac. It's separated from the products to represent an idea, a lifestyle. So the simulation, the brand image, has overtaken the reality, which is the product. Politics, the simulation of the candidate becomes more critical, more important than their abilities or their beliefs. Why do they win? Because we, all of us, prefer simulation. We want it more. It's more important to us. Just think about everything in your life. We're in a world with fake meat, fake fabrics, fake celebrities, fake personalities, fake plants, fake grass. The trouble is that our dopamine comes from these places instead of real things. We're addicted to simulations. We get addicted to simulacra. We've sold our soul to hyper real things. It's impossible for us to think in terms outside the simulation. So can we get back to real? I'm wondering this too. Some people might say that we're past the point of going back to it. Like we're so deep in this world of fakes, even if we tried to get back to what is real, there'd be nothing left. There's another side to this, and there could be little pockets of realness out there. They might be small, they might be hidden, but they're moments or places where what you see is what you get. So think of a genuine smile from someone you've never even met before and how that just feels. Think of art that's made just for the love of making the art, not for the selling of it. I think the key is to just know that the world we're in is filled with illusions and distractions, and we might not be able to completely get out of this, but we can definitely become smarter about navigating it. So just remember, anything that takes you further from who you are is the simulation. Clothing, ego, marketing, ads, buildings, neon lights, branding, labels, all simulation. Essentially, get back to nature. We are nature. That's one of the big illusions that is simulacra, is convincing you that you're not nature anymore, that I need to go spend time in nature. Bring back some kind of depth in your life, slow living. Remember that no matter what your opinion is of something, you're misinformed to a degree. The more certain someone is in your life, the more you should be skeptical, including yourself. Maybe the most radical thing that you can do today is slow down and unplug.
So now, people can be
at what the criminals and of Moderna. A very small number of criminal industrial conspirators decided to subordinate the entirety of the human population for the purpose of their sinister plans to enrich themselves while impoverishing and killing the rest of humanity. And I'm done being polite. We've long passed polite. When the words acceptable death rate become part of an industrial norm, we have lost the plot of humanity. And that's not my words. Those were the words of the World Health Organization and of Pfizer and of Moderna when they were given the authorization to begin the process of killing human beings in the interest of advancing their goals. Next slide. And I'm also not going to sugarcoat this. This is a criminal cartel. We are acting as though there's some sort of redeemable quality somewhere in some esoteric layer that somehow or another the World Health Organization must have some salutatory benefit. Well, I'm going to tell you, since its formation in the 1940s, the World Health Organization has been nothing more than a criminal cartel that has a sole and singular intent. And I will show you the document that proves what I'm saying. This is not an allegation. This is actually provable by their own words in their own hand. And they use a four-step process to execute every one of their nefarious plans. They begin by planning an exercise, then they go to the business of funding that exercise, then they create the rationale for the thing that they're going to do, and then they deploy and profit from it. And in violation of 15 U.S. Code Section 19, which for those of you listening, coincidentally started with the Clayton Act in the same year that the World Health Organization in the United States, 1913, the same year the World Health Organization's progenitors also started. So I find it fascinating that we passed the Clayton Act in 1913 and we set in motion 110 years ago the criminal conspiracy, which we now call the World Health Organization. 110 years later. and in violation of TIFU, or TEFU, I don't even know how to say it, the TFEU, the treaty allegedly for the functioning of the European Union, which I think needs to now be called the Treaty for the Dysfunctional European Cabal. Article 101 unambiguously lays out the conditions that this was never a public health anything. It was racketeering for the purpose of instilling terror to adapt the behavior of a population, period. That's what it was. That's what it always was. And we can come up with every theoretical argument we want to make about things, but the problem, even with the theory that we had an outbreak of something, is falsifiable for the data from Zurich that shows us that in the year of the death pandemic of the globe, life insurance companies paid $30 billion less in claims. Now, if there's a medical professional or a social professional or anybody else who wants to debate that we could develop a virus cunningly that could find out your bank account, your insurance policy statements, and whether you're paid up on your premiums, that's a big ask. It turns out that the data is unambiguous. We did not have a pandemic, we had genocide. And we need to call it what it is. Next slide. When I say we planned it, let's make sure we understand exactly the not so fine print of the fine print. And I want to call your attention first to the right-hand column of the slide. This is the 2011 data that the World Health Organization, the Wellcome Trust, PATH, and the Gates Foundation did on their wonderful worldwide program for a malaria vaccine for children under the age of 6 months of age. And in their clinical trial, it's helpful to point out that they murdered 66 children in the vaccine group and then cunningly used the term control for a control group in which they murdered 28 children. Now, the reason I said murdered and the reason why I use that term is because it's exactly what it was. Because it turns out that this control group was not a saline injection. It was not some sort of innocuous, innocent thing. It was actually a cocktail of other known pathogenic disease-carrying injections. The control group was known to kill people, and the experimental control group was actually theoretically maybe going to kill people. And what we did was we actually went ahead and murdered them all. And cunningly, under Article 5, Section 13, which I've put on this slide, I want you to understand why I said at its formation in 1947, when the WHO was funded and founded, it was funded and founded by people intent to commit a crime because of their own language. Section 13 of Article 5 ends with the following statement: immunity from personal arrest or detention, blah, 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 immunity from legal process of every kind. Now, if you didn't intend to commit a crime, why would you need to give yourself permanent and absolute immunity from every form of prosecution, and it's worse, even investigation for prosecution of every kind? People sit there and pretend, well, that's like diplomatic immunity. Do you realize this isn't even meeting the standard of diplomatic immunity? This is a criminal organization who set in motion their own law to protect themselves against crimes they knew they were going to commit. And when I say they knew they were going to commit, I mean they knew it. Because their first director general, none other than Dr. René Sand, who happened to be in the hospitality of the Germans in Dachau in 1940 earlier, in 1947, mysteriously, with the largesse of the Rockefeller Foundation, was nominated to become the first director general of the WHO. And within 5 short years, René Sand decided to authorize the real purpose of the WHO in writing by then Director General Dr. Brock Chisholm, who advocated for population control as its primary objective. Does that sound like public health to anyone in this room? This is not public health. This is the advancement of the same genocidal program that began with the Carnegie Foundation's funding of the eugenics office at Cold Spring Labs in the United States in 1913 under the philanthropy of Andrew Carnegie. People, stop fooling yourself. We debate the leaves on the tree of what we call this pandemic thing, but we're not going to the root. This was an organized crime, racketeering entity set up to give itself first absolute immunity and then execute its plans to make sure it controls who lives, who dies, and who gets any chance at life. And if you think that I am somehow inflating numbers, let me be unambiguous. Under every treatment of tax provision, if I were to tell you that there is an 88% controlling interest of any organization, you might conclude that that actually aggregates into a controlling interest. And it turns out that if we look at the foundation donations to the World Health Organization, 88% of those come from a single organization, Gates Foundation. That constitutes a violation of every competitiveness law in Europe and every competitiveness law in the United States. This is absolutely not only not an independent, charitably funded donation, but more importantly, under the tax laws on both sides of the Atlantic, this constitutes directed donations which specifically are forbidden and do not have any place anywhere in the Charter of the World Health Organization or any of the UN-affiliated organizations. When I say this is a crime, I mean it's a tax crime, racketeering crime, a money laundering crime, and now the crime of racketeering leading to murder and global terrorism. Next slide. I told you that the second thing after they plan it is they fund it. And why don't we use the criminals' language in their own words, because it's the best way to say it. When they actually planned the release of the use of a biologically modified chimera associated with the model derived from coronavirus, they actually said the following: to sustain the funding base beyond the crisis, we need to increase the public understanding for the needful medical countermeasures such as a pan-influenza or pan-coronavirus vaccine. Now, let me pause for just one moment and remind you that the crisis that they were speaking of was a crisis of diminishing funding. There was no health crisis. This was a crisis of their coffers were starting to run dry. That's the crisis. And let's read on. A key driver is the media, and the economics will follow the hype. We need to use that hype to our advantage to get to the real issues. Investors will respond if they see profit at the end of the process. That is officially the statement made by the conspiratorial cabal that by that time was the decade of vaccines put in motion in 2011 by the Global Preparedness Monitoring Board of the World Health Organization, and it was the funding base for Peter Daszak's partnership with the chimeric production of pathogens both in North Carolina and in Wuhan. So don't tell me that we have to do an investigation into where this came from. The criminals have admitted to it in their own words. Next slide. And now we get the fun one that no one in Congress is willing to address, which is the elephant in the room. On October the 21st, 2014, despite the multiple conversations between Senator Rand Paul and Anthony Fauci, where we've been told that Rand Paul has done everything he can to put Fauci on the ropes, he has had in his possession the letter that you see on the left. And it is the letter conveniently on NIAID letterhead sent to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, which unambiguously states that during the gain-of-function moratorium, which, by the way, if we use the word moratorium, feels like that means you're supposed to stop. Why don't we go ahead and look at two pieces of this letter? First, the second bullet under Project One, which, by the way, was not part of the original grant. This was to look at the novel functions of the virus pathogenesis in vivo. You know what that means? In living systems. The grant was supposed to be clinical simulations and models, but this grant was modified with this letter to say we were going to authorize gain-of-function research during the moratorium in living systems. And then we love the last paragraph of this letter, which conveniently says, as your grant is currently funded, this pause is voluntary. How many times have you met a voluntary moratorium? And the best part about it is that if we look at the very last line, or continue to conduct the applicable gain-of-function research until the end of the currently active budget period. But here comes the problem. You know who is supplying the budget? An indefinite term, unlimited amount contract from DARPA and from NIH. Isn't it convenient to have a perpetually funded project that needs to stop when the money runs out, when you find out that there is no point where the money runs out because there is no end to the thing that has no end? And lest you think that I'm making an allegation, which I'm not, I'm making an accusation. Let's be clear. And there's a big difference. I'm not alleging anything. They actually went to the trouble of telling us that it was going to be the Wuhan virus that was going to get us. As you see on the right-hand side of the screen, published in 2016, March 14th of 2016, the SARS-like Wuhan Institute of Virology Virus 1, and I quote, is poised for human emergence. Does that sound like we're just surprised that something in Wuhan went a little haywire in December of 2019? Or does it feel like we were told, look at Wuhan, and look at coronavirus, and look at what we've been doing to manipulate coronavirus in Wuhan and the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and lo and behold, we're going to go ahead and tell you that we're ready to release it in 2016. Next slide. We're almost done. And then they created it. Now, all of you know that I am criticized globally for my use of the term biological warfare. I do that because I am credentialed to do that. I happen to be, for the United States government, in the early part of the 2000s and the latter part of the 90s, a person who was sent around the world to look at the proliferation of biological and chemical weapons. I'm acutely familiar with the definition of what a biological warfare agent is in the 18 U.S. Code, the criminal code of violations of biological and chemical weapons. And so my assessment is, in fact, professional and right. And the reason for that is I'm the one credentialed to make that determination for the United States government for many years. That's why I say it. But let's pretend for the moment that I'm just a nut job. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. So why don't we look at what the criminals said themselves, shall we? In 2005, at a conference sponsored by DARPA and the MITRE Corporation, Ralph Baric, the architect of the lethal strand that has been injected into millions and billions of people's arms, that Ralph Baric was sponsored to present the following, and let's go ahead and use his words, presentation: synthetic coronaviruses, biohacking, bio-warfare enabling technologies. Does that sound like a public health distribution program? Does that sound like something that is accidentally misinterpreted to mean something else? Or does biological warfare enabling technologies sound like not countermeasures or pandemic preparedness? It sounds to me like biological warfare enabling technologies. And the reason why I have that hunch is what followed was he received, next to his NIAID grants, non-competitive DARPA grants in matching funds for over $140 million of aggregate funding going into his and his related programs on synthetic biological warfare enabling technologies. So do I have a problem calling the injection a biological warfare enabling technology? Absolutely not, because that's what they called it. And we know that they knew they called it that on September 18th, 2019. Because on September 18th, 2019, the racketeering, co-conspiring cabal of interlocking directorates, also known as the World Health Organization, said that they were going to conduct an experience for the world that was going to be a rapidly spreading pandemic due to a lethal respiratory pathogen. The lethality in that statement is the problem. They didn't say we're going to maybe get a little bit of sniffles going around. They said we were going to actually have the promulgation of a deadly agent. And the stated reason, in September 2020, the progress indicator is that the world would accept a universal vaccine. Not, we'll look at other options of treatment. Not, we'll have a look at what might be early intervention, as Dr. McCullough has so clearly advocated for in many, many, many instances. Not that. We stated on September 18th, 2019, we were intending to kill. And we were intending to kill to create the fear that would drive people to accept something that without coercion, no one would have accepted. And that's published by the criminal racketeers. Next slide, and there's only 2 to go if you're following. Deploy and profit from it. We were told investors will respond if they see profit at the end of the process, and lo and behold, guess what they saw? Profit at the end of the process. 2022, $100 billion for Pfizer of public funds. Moderna, after lying to the Congress in October of 2020, when they were asked to actually verify whether NIAID was promoting an injection that would enrich NIAID, where Anthony Fauci and the entire team at NIH said that they had no financial interest in their recommendation, they receive a back payment royalty of $400 million for the first payment of the royalty. $400 million. More than any Institute of Health has ever received in a single payment for a single invention in the history of American medical research. And lo and behold, what do we receive after that? A request from the World Health Organization to expand its budget by 11% to make sure that the people who profited from it donate to it. And guess what they just did? They laundered the money right back. That's what they did. Next, and now you get the final slide. This is not a public health crime. This is actually not a constitutional crime. This is a criminal act done by a criminal institution established to enable criminal behavior since its foundation in 1947. That is what this is. And we should not be debating the merits of democracy or liberty or anything else, as irrational as that would be if we stood at a bank robbery and debated the merits of printing dollar bills. The problem is not the dollar bills, it's the bank robber. And the problem here is not health, and it's not public health, and it's not the suppression of information and the suppression of dissident views and the absolute unconscionable treatment of physicians around the world and academicians around the world who spoke out against this. That's not the crime. The crime is that we had criminal racketeers who conspired and developed a, quote, emergency. The same criminal racketeers planned, manufactured, and did all agency capture to make sure that you were told that you would use terms that they tell you to use: vaccine, face mask, health, social distancing, none of which had ordinary use definition. So we just used them. Criminal racketeers price fixed with interlocking directorates where known competitors came together and fixed prices in direct collusion, in violation of both European Union standards and in violation of both the Sherman and the Clayton Act in the United States. These were crimes. It was organized crime, and we should treat it as such. criminal racketeers publicly lied under oath. And this resulted in the death and destruction of liberty, and most importantly, the death and destruction of the integrity of well-meaning people who sit here today doing everything they can within their power to try to treat the calamities created by this catastrophe. I will not for a moment denigrate the multiple contributions of amazing academic and medical professionals who've tried desperately to step into the gap and stop the corrupt outcomes of these crimes. But I will, without doubt, say the following. Until we treat this as a criminal conspiracy of criminal racketeers resulting in global terrorism for the purpose of profiteering and murder, until we have that conversation, we're having the wrong conversation. Because we are not here to debate the merits of a modified agreement for a criminal racketeering organization. We are here to end the criminal organization itself. This is my call to every single person on this planet. Don't just limit the power of the WHO. Destroy the WHO. Thank you very much.
How dare you! How dare you! How dare you!
Even the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, if you go to their section of Group 1, which is the science, they don't support any of these claims. And I assure you, having served on it, it's biased, but you couldn't get any real scientists to agree some of the nonsense that's being promoted.
There's no such thing as settled science, especially climate.
Over the last 50 million years, temperatures steadily declined, plunging the Earth into what geologists call the late Cenozoic Ice Age. We are still in that ice age.
The reason there's all that ice on the poles is because we're in an ice age. Everybody knows that who knows anything about the history of the Earth. This is an ice age. We're at the tail end of a 50 million year cooling period, and they're saying it's too hot.
But of the mild warming that has taken place in the last 300 to 400 years, can any of it be attributed to human emissions of CO2?
What we have here is a ginkgo tree, and it's actually a living fossil in the sense that this type of tree first appeared about 270 million years ago. On the underside of the leaf, there are what we call stomata, the cells where they can take CO2. So they're actually measuring how much CO2 is in the air, and then they adjust the number of these stomata to how much CO2 there is. And by looking at fossils and measuring how many there are at a different time, it says something about what was the level of CO2 back in time.
So when we look back in time, what do we find? Over almost all of the last 500 million years, the level of CO2 in the atmosphere has been far, far higher than it is now. Even with modern industry's contribution to CO2 levels, by geological standards, the level of atmospheric CO2 today is close to being as low as it has ever been.
At present, we have about 400 parts per million. 50 million years ago, it might have been 2,000 parts per million.
I think current estimates of global CO2 is 423 or so parts per million today. If we look through the Phanerozoic, the last 550 million years, we would see CO2 on the order of 7,000 parts per million.
CO2 is plant food, and the result of much higher levels of atmospheric CO2 in the past was a much, much greener world.
Periods of elevated CO2 tend to be time periods of a huge biodiversity on the planet. In fact, we're in a CO2 famine if we look over the last 550 million years.
At the depths of the most recent glacial maximum, the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere sank so low, all life on Earth came close to extinction.
They say CO2 is higher than it's been for 100,000 years, but what they don't tell you in that period they're talking about is that CO2 sank so low that all life on Earth nearly died.
20,000 years ago, CO2 is at the lowest level it has ever been in the history of the Earth, 180 parts per million. If it had gone down another 30 parts per million, we'd all be dead.
There is a low point of CO2 where photosynthesis becomes so inefficient that plant life would die. Then everything else starts to perish after that.
During the last glacial maximum, there's good evidence that in many parts of the world there was plant starvation from not enough CO2. So we should be very grateful that CO2 levels are beginning to go back up. We're still far from the historical norms, which would be several thousand parts per million. There's not enough fossil fuel to get there, but at least we're making a start.
CO2 makes up a tiny fraction of the gases in the atmosphere, just 0.04%. It is just one of 25 different greenhouse gases, which, taken as a whole, form only one part of Earth's complex climate system. So what evidence is there that this trace gas is having any noticeable impact on the climate?
There is no truth to the idea that the Earth is warmer now than it has been in the past. It's a lie. There is no truth that CO2 is higher than it should be. That is a lie.
Earth's climate has changed many times over the course of its long history and will continue to change without any help from us.
Climate always changes, you know. Who denies climate change? It's always changing.
There's no such thing as a climate emergency happening on this planet now. There's no evidence of one.
Yeah, the extreme weather event story is just absurd. There's no basis to it at all. It's just based on propaganda. The actual data shows the opposite.
I've shown you the official data, the official science. Tell me what I'm denying.
The climate alarm is nonsense. You know, it's a hoax. As I've never liked hoax. I think scam is a better word, but I'm willing to live with hoax.
But why are we told again and again that man-made climate chaos is an undisputed scientific fact, beyond question?
Albeit of the Navy, not the Marine Corps, but accompanied by a fellow Marine, Senator Sullivan, to whom I will yield shortly, especially honored to pay tribute to one of the nation's most storied and steadfast institutions in the entire history of our nation, the United States Marine Corps, which marks its 250th anniversary on Monday. As legend and history have it, 250 years ago in the back room of Tun Tavern in Philadelphia, a new fighting force was born, a force of grit, determination, and unshakable loyalty. Since that day in 1775, Marines have answered every call without any exception with courage and conviction, not because it was easy, but because it was right. The motto of the Marine Corps, Semper Fidelis, always faithful, is more than just a phrase. It is a lifelong commitment, and as we know, there are no former Marines, there are no ex-Marines. It is a lifelong commitment and identity. Semper Fidelis speaks to the bond between Marines, to the cause they serve and to the nation that they protect. That bond by no means ends with active duty. It continues in communities across America where Marines continue to serve, living out the values of America as teachers, first responders, public servants, and leaders. The Marine Corps has fought in every American conflict, from the Revolutionary War to the War on Terror on the beaches of Iwo Jima, to the frozen mountains of Korea, in the jungles of Vietnam, and in the sands of Fallujah. Marines have stood their ground. They have led from the front, often at great personal cost, with no expectation of glory. Telling the story of America is impossible without telling the story of the United States Marine Corps. Their sacrifices have safeguarded our freedom. Their discipline has inspired generations. Their traditions of toughness, honor, duty have stood the test of time. Historic battles exemplified the Marine Corps' unyielding commitment to courage sacrifice, and duty, and they define the very character of our military. Derna, Chapultepec, First Bull Run, Belleau Wood, Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Peleliu, Iwo Jima, Okinawa, the Chosin Reservoir, Khe Sanh, Hue, Hue, the liberation of Kuwait, Fallujah, and Helmand Province. Marines have not only fought our wars, they have also responded to humanitarian crises, assisted in natural disasters, and stood sentry in times of peace. They are not just warfighters, they are ambassadors of American resolve and resilience. This milestone, 250 years, is an opportunity to reflect, to honor, and to recommit. We honor the thousands of Marines who never made it home, who gave their last full measure of devotion, as the saying goes. We honor the Gold Star families who carry their memory every single day. We honor the wounded in body and some in spirit, whose lives are forever shaped by their service. We honor every Marine, past and present, who has earned the title with sweat, sacrifice, and a fierce sense of purpose. Let me acknowledge as well the families who stand behind every Marine, spouses, children, parents. They serve quietly, often without any recognition, but always with deep devotion. Their strength sustains the core, those families and friends and loved ones. Their sacrifices, too, must be honored. Mr. President, the 250th anniversary is not only a celebration, it's a solemn reminder we make to all who wear the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor that we will never forget their service, and we will always fight to give them the support, care, and respect they've earned. This milestone is a chance to educate future generations about what it means to serve and why the Marine Corps' legacy matters, not just in history books, but in the daily defense of our democracy and our ideals. The world has never been more dangerous and more in need of that service. As we look to the next 250 years of the greatest nation in the history of the world, let's ensure that our policies, our resources, our commitments match the trust we place in all of our military, including our United States Marines. We need to provide our Marines and our military men and women with the tools and the resources they need to fight and win, and the care they deserve when they return home. It's not about the rhetoric or just the celebration of birthdays. What really matters is what we do between the birthdays to keep faith with our men and women in uniform, and afterward, when they return to our great nation, we can leave no veteran behind in healthcare, as well as education, training, and everything they need to be successful when they come back. Let us rededicate ourselves to the ideals they uphold: freedom, justice, service above self. To every Marine, from the youngest recruit in Parris Island or San Diego to the oldest veteran in our communities, we say thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for never wavering as a Marine. Happy birthday, United States Marine Corps. Semper Fidelis. I am happy now to yield to my colleague and friend from Alaska and fellow Marine, United States Senator Dan Sullivan.
Mr. President, Colonel of Marines and Senator from Alaska, Semper Fi.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank my colleague, Senator Blumenthal, and the presiding officer for his great service as well. We do know the Marine Corps is part of the Department of the Navy, so we're all related here. I won't say what I used to say to my father, who was a Navy officer, but in response to that. But it is an honor to be on the Senate floor here with Senator Blumenthal, my colleague and fellow Marine. You know, There's a lot of frustration going on here in the Senate. We're trying to get this government reopened, pay our workers. People are suffering. But I do think it's also important to switch gears, come down here in a bipartisan fashion to pass Senate Resolution 124 by Senator Blumenthal and myself on commemorating the 250th anniversary of the United States Marine Corps, a truly remarkable milestone by one of America's most remarkable institutions. And that happens tomorrow on November 10th, our birthday, the Marine Corps birthday. Now, we Marines, Mr. President, you know this, take our November 10th birthday very seriously. No matter where Marines are, anywhere in the world, deployed, they always take time to celebrate the birthday of our beloved Corps on November 10th. Everybody in the Marine Corps wishes each other a happy birthday. We also are kind of proud of the fact that we're the only military service that was founded in a bar. Yes, that's true. Tun Tavern, Philadelphia, PA, was where the Marine Corps was founded. And at our birthday celebrations, we do a lot. They're great celebrations. If you haven't been to one, anyone watching, I encourage you to go to a Marine Corps birthday ball. You will have the time of your life. You will come away filled with a sense of patriotism and pride, whether you served in the military, in the Marine Corps, or not. You will love it. At these birthday celebrations, we, of course, as Senator Blumenthal mentioned, remember our fallen. We recommit ourselves to keep the Marines the world's finest fighting force, which it is and has been for decades. And we take time to recognize not just the Marines present, but in particular, the oldest and youngest Marines present. We have a very solemn cake cutting ceremony. In fact, after the birthday cake is cut, with the Menmuk sword, the guest of honor presents the first piece of cake to the oldest Marine present, and then he hands that piece of cake off after he takes a bite to the youngest Marine present, signifying the passing of heritage and culture and tradition from one generation to the other. Now, Mr. President, last night there were two special Marine Corps balls that I cared a lot about. One, the one I really cared about, was in Anchorage, Alaska, hosted by Delta Company, 4th Law Enforcement Battalion. I was very honored and set to be there as the guest of honor last night. This is an Alaska Marine Corps ball. We have such a great time. I've been going to that ball for years with my wife, my daughters, friends, fellow Marines. And alas, given the work that we're doing here in the Senate to reopen the government, I was not able to attend. A huge disappointment for me. Really, really wanted to be in Alaska with my fellow Marines and my family. There was also another Marine Corps ball, Mr. President, last night. It was actually in D.C. here, the Commandant's Ball. And at the last minute, I thought, hey, if I can't be in Anchorage, I'm going to at least celebrate the 250th with the Commandant, some top generals, top enlisted Marines, a couple of my Senate colleagues, Senator Ernst, Senator Daines. The Vice President, J.D. Vance, was the guest of honor. By the way, Mr. President, he's the first Marine Vice President ever, so got a lot of shouts and recognition last night. But the Marine who stole the show last night, Mr. President, was the oldest Marine, Corporal Nels Mokler, 99 years old, born in 1926, Iwo Jima Combat Marine, D1, looking as strong as he did when he was an 18-year-old corporal storming the beaches of Iwo Jima last night. He was there. The place went nuts when he was recognized. A 5-minute standing ovation for this great American hero. What a moment. Finally, Mr. President, at every Marine Corps birthday ball throughout the world for the last 100 years, this message that I'm going to read right now is read. It's the message delivered to the Marines on the birthday of the Marine Corps by the Commandant of the Marine Corps, the 13th Commandant of the Marine Corps, General Jean Lejeune, in 1921. And he issued this statement, this message, and ever since then, since 1921, every single Marine Corps birthday celebration for over 100 years has been read, has had this proclamation read. It was read last night in Anchorage. It was read last night in D.C. And for the Marine Corps balls today and tomorrow on November 10th, it'll be read there. And here's what it says, Mr. President. Remember, this is from 1921, but it kind of gives you the sense of how we feel about our illustrious Corps. A message from the Commandant of the Marine Corps, republished in the United States Marine Corps Manual, edition 1921. On November 10th, 1775, a Corps of Marines was created by a resolution of the Continental Congress. Since that date, many thousand men have borne the name Marine. In memory of them, it is fitting that we who are Marines should commemorate the birthday of our Corps by calling to mind the glories of its long and illustrious history. The record of our Corps is one which will bear comparison with that of the most famous military organizations in the world's history. During 90 of the 146 years of its existence, the Marine Corps has been in action against the nation's foes. From the Battle of Trenton to the Argonne, Marines have won foremost honors in war, and in the long eras of tranquility at home, generation after generation of Marines have grown gray in war in both hemispheres and in every corner of the 7 seas, that our country and its citizens might enjoy peace and security. In every battle and skirmish since the birth of our Corps, Marines have acquitted themselves with the greatest distinction, winning new honors on each occasion until the term Marine has come to signify all that is highest in the military efficiency and soldierly virtue. This high name of distinction and soldierly repute, we who are Marines today have received from those who preceded us in the Corps. With it, we also receive from them the eternal spirit which has animated our Corps from generation to generation and has been the distinguishing mark of the Marines in every age. So long as that spirit continues to flourish, Marines will be found equal to every emergency in the future, as they have been in the past, and the men of our nation will regard us as worthy successors to the long line of illustrious men who have served as soldiers of the sea since the founding of the Corps. Mr. President, you've heard that before. That's the message for the Marine Corps birthday from the Commandant of the Marine Corps, Jean Lejeune, issued in 1921. And every Marine hears this every year, and it's still incredibly relevant. So I want to thank Senator Blumenthal again for leading this effort on the 250th birthday resolution that we're going to pass here in the Senate in commemoration of the Marine Corps' founding. We have a long tradition of being the service that's most ready when our nation is least ready. And again, to all the Marines out there, Semper Fi, happy birthday, and here's to 250 more years for our Corps. I yield the floor.
President.
Senator from Connecticut.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank my colleague from Alaska for those very powerful words from himself and the Commandant. And as he has remarked, this Marine Corps birthday always has enormous personal meaning for all of us who have served in the United States Marine Corps, including for my son, Matthew, who was in Helmand Province. I'm hopeful that he will invite his younger brother to one of the Marine Corps balls. Michael served as a Navy SEAL, and this occasion is joined by our colleagues Senators Gallego and Young, also Marines, and I'm sure is supported by others in this body, in the House of Representatives who have served. So on this great occasion, I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on Armed Services be discharged from further consideration of Resolution 124 and the Senate proceed to its immediate consideration.
Senate Resolution 124, recognizing the 250th anniversary of the United States Marine Corps.
Is there objection to proceeding to the measure? Without objection, the committee is discharged, and the Senate will proceed.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent the resolution be agreed to, the Blumenthal amendment to the preamble, which is at the desk, be considered and agreed to, the preamble as amended be agreed to, and that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection? Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Live with hoax.
But why are we told again and again that man-made climate chaos is an undisputed scientific fact, beyond question, beyond doubt? To answer this, we must examine the so-called consensus on climate change.
Thank you very much.
Until the 1980s, global warming was little more than an eccentric scare story put about by radical environmentalists. But then the cause was picked up by an ambitious young senator, Al Gore, who would soon become vice president. $1 billion a year of public money was made available for research into climate change. This quickly rose to $2 billion.
Up to that level.
Academic researchers in various disciplines began to apply for this climate funding.
If you want to qualify for money that's labeled climate, well, you take whatever you're doing and you add a little bit of climate speak to it, and away you go.
So all I have to do is add a little wrinkle to my grant application to explain how, well, I'm worried that climate change will mean the death of all the maple trees. And so right away you qualify for funding.
Academics of every kind lined up for climate funding. Climate became an exciting new area of interest for sociologists, biologists, professors of English literature, lecturers in gender studies, and many more.
And it also served to create a community. I mean, you've become a climate scientist now, even though you know nothing about the physics of climate.
Thousands of papers were published on climate change and prostitution, climate change and beer, climate change and the Black Death, climate change and disability, climate change and video games, and everything else imaginable.
There's an almost comical list of studies out there. Just do a Google search on climate change and everything comes up.
Few of these papers ever questioned whether climate change was actually true.
After you've done the research and you write the paper up, sometimes you'll find there's no effect at all from climate, but you still have to say in your papers, oh yes, climate change is real, and we just need to study this some more.
If Congress is willing to pay you to find evidence of global warming, by golly, as a scientist, we're going to go find evidence of it, because that's what we're being paid to do. And guess what? If you don't find evidence or say the evidence suggests it's not a problem, your funding ends. This totally corrupts the way we look at the science.
How dare you? How dare you?
Meta demanded that we erase any evidence of such dangers that we saw. Despite Meta's attempts to hide these sensitive findings, my research still revealed emotional and psychological damage, particularly to women who were sexually solicited, molested, or worse. In response, Meta demanded I change my research in the future to not gather this data on emotional and psychological harm. When my colleagues' research showed the emotional impact of children being threatened by physical harm by strangers online, Meta not only restricted internal sharing, but manipulated reports to obscure any emotional damage.
A recent analysis found that Americans' electricity bills are going to rise by as much as 25% over the next 4 years. 25% because of data center demand. So it's not just a future fear, it's a present problem. Households are already feeling the pinch. Electric bills for an average home in Ohio increased by $15 a month because of data centers. A worker making Ohio's minimum wage would have to work an hour and a half just to be able to afford Trump's data center tax on electricity in that state. And that's not to mention the rest of their electricity bill.
This is exactly the playbook on how you get otherwise decent, kind people laughing at a murder on the internet. That is how you radicalize a country without firing a shot. And let me tell you something that you're not supposed to think about right now. You share more in common. You share more with somebody across the aisle than with a billionaire donor or some media executive pretending to speak for you. I don't think they want you to see that. They need you divided. They have to have you blind and full of rage, because a united, sane, connected public is the one thing that they actually fear. So how does a normal person, just a regular person, a guy who loves his kids, pays his bills, maybe argues politics at Thanksgiving, how does he turn into somebody who cheers at the assassination of a political opponent on the internet? This does not happen overnight. It is.
The battle has evolved. Once, censorship was a domain of the government, with its Pentagon propaganda machine and the FCC's regulatory powers. Today, the censors are private corporations.
Our First Amendment is under assault, not just by big tech, but by government agencies colluding behind closed doors. Voices are being silenced. Platforms are shut down, and dissent is labeled as misinformation. This isn't freedom. It's tyranny dressed in algorithms.
Dear Mr. President, my name is Trennis Evans, and I want to thank you for the courageous pardons of January 6th, those that were affected by that, my 1,600 fellow Americans and myself, that were destroyed by the jackbooted thuggery of the Biden administration and the wayward FBI and a DOJ who meant to persecute, not prosecute, to destroy Christians and conservatives and those that would stand and say something about a stolen election.
Fun fact, Deloitte has to pay back the Australian government an undecided amount of money after it was found the consultation company had given the government a $440,000 report that included AI-generated errors like referencing research papers that don't exist and including fake quotes from federal judges. The scariest part about this is that the report was meant to advise and influence government policy. The report Deloitte produced was on the Targeted Compliance Framework, which is a part of the Australian welfare system. The report was advising policymakers on the system that decides who should have their welfare cut and when. After the government published the report, Dr. Chris Rudge, a Sydney University researcher of welfare law, immediately knew things were off because the report referenced a book one of his coworkers had written, except she never wrote that book because it was an AI hallucination. Chris found over 20 mistakes in the report, including fake quotes from federal judges, as well as referencing research papers that didn't exist. Deloitte, very quietly, on a Friday before a long weekend, corrected and resubmitted the report with a disclosure that AI had been used in its creation. Australia paid consulting firms like Deloitte almost $1 billion in 2024 to produce reports to help the government make decisions about public policy.
This video is for all of the free Palestine people. Ready? I just have one question. Why are you guys silent now? I mean, Hamas, as you see, is carrying out public executions of Palestinian men who they feel were working with Israel. I mean, you guys spent 2 years demonizing Israel and screaming for the safety of Palestinians. But it's funny, now that they're being terrorized by their own people, like they were prior to the war starting, which would be Hamas, you guys aren't saying anything. You're conveniently quiet. I'll tell you why they're saying nothing. Because their protesting was all performative. That's why. A bunch of dumb lefties who were taking on a new cause that was interesting and fun, and now that it's over, it's what's next? I mean, we can't protest against the extreme Muslims that are terrorizing their own people because that would make us Islamophobic and we're on the left. So we can't do that. So next cause. You know how I know this? Because you guys said nothing, not a damn peep, when Syria, Yemen, and Sudan were being attacked by none other than extremist Muslim organizations. You guys have also been conveniently quiet over the genocide happening in Nigeria against Nigerian Christians who have been killed since 2009, and not a word, no protest, nothing. You guys have zero credibility. Congratulations. On to the next cause.
Just a fact. There's no safe way to smoke crack or meth. Sooner or later, it kills you. And that's just a fact.
Yeah, we don't need more gun control. We need more idiot control. Well, what if I said, if they told me no, I said, okay, I want to buy a full-page ad that says, John Kennedy's a good senator. He is not an ignorant slut. These people are about 10 exits past normal. The party is controlled right now by people who majored
in online activism with a minor and puberty blockers. If you think this list is real, you probably think that Elvis is alive and running a small bait stand on Lake Erie. My mama didn't raise a fool, and if she did, it was one of my brothers. They're worried that she doesn't. They're worried that she was that kid in grade school who ate paste. People are worried that if she walked by a polygraph machine, the dang thing would explode. Governor Newsom his record shows this. He's the dictionary definition of weenie. My Democratic friends, Brian, seem determined to find out what it's like to be a Jets fan. Just from a political standpoint, you never interfere with your enemy when he's kicking his own ass. For some people, the best way to get back on your feet is to get off your ass. Can I take cocaine with my spouse? I'm not talking about buying it, but let's suppose I came in one day and the cocaine was there. Clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. Republicans aren't perfect, but the other side is crazy. Tariffs are like whiskey. A little whiskey under the right circumstances can be refreshing. Too much whiskey under the wrong circumstances, and you end up drunk as a goat. Senator Schumer never makes the same mistake twice. He makes it 5 or 6 times just to make sure he got it right. I'd tell him, look, you just got to try harder not to suck. If the aliens landed tomorrow and said, take me to your leader, it would be embarrassing. The world leaders who believe in Western values, or at least believe in the sovereignty of their own country, have got to grow some oranges. God created the world, but everything else is made in China. How did that happen? We let it. This country was founded by geniuses, but it's being run by a bunch of idiots. How can I put this? Christmas ornaments, drywall, and Jerry Epstein. Name 3 things that don't hang themselves. That's what the American people think. Putting the vice president in charge of solving this problem, I don't know, it's like making El Chapo the drug czar.
All right. So last time we had sleepy Joe Biden napping and drooling all over my very impressive golf course like a dog. It was absolutely ridiculous. And so that was a disaster. He didn't have a clue what was happening. But this time I invited Kamala Harris, you may remember her, from her disastrous attempt to defeat me in the election, which I won easily.
I don't think you beat me easily. It was a very close election that had I had more time to trick people to vote for me, I would have beaten you.
What are you talking about? It was a massive landslide for me, you understand. Everybody says so. Just look at the map of counties. I won 2,633 counties, and you won basically nothing. The only counties that you won were full of losers and people with baby Trump derangement syndrome.
Donald, why is Joe hiding behind that tree over there?
I'm not here. You can't see me.
And what is that smell? It smells absolutely horrifying.
Oh, Joe didn't want you to know he was here because he hates you, okay? Just like most people do. So he tried to hide very dumbly behind one of my beautiful trees. And before that, he was just slamming Taco Bell like he was Rosie O'Donnell, okay? It was not pretty. Then he very disgustingly went number 2 all over himself in my beautiful course.
Oh, don't tell her that. Tell her somebody else pooped in my pants.
So that's the smell, okay? Now, just call your caddy over, probably just some weak loser if they work for you, and grab your club that you probably got from China.
So I also don't have a caddy anymore. I did have one, but you had him deported.
That's right, I did. He was a horror show, okay? Always rigging golf matches for you that you couldn't win fairly, trying to throw your golf opponent in jail when they were beating you. Now, I also invited your husband, Doug, but I'm not seeing him anywhere, so I guess he stayed at home with the nanny.
You listen here, Donald. I can imagine doing things, and once you have imagined a thing, it becomes an idea. And that idea can never be unthought.
What does that even mean? How many glasses of wine have you slammed today? Look, just try to take your swing before you pass out like Sleepy Joe over there. What are you doing? You don't pick the ball up and wave it around like an insane person. You hit it with a club. You might be even worse than Joe, if you can believe it.
I'm unburdened by what has been because I can see what can be. And what can be is unburdening me.
Okay, well, whatever that's supposed to mean, hopefully security can come and get you off of my beautiful golf course. This is all just so unbelievable. I've got Sleepy Joe over there drooling and going number 2 all over the place, and Kamala stumbling around, drunk as a goat. All right, everybody. Today, we all came down to the great state of Florida, which I won easily, by the way, many times, to my beach at Mar-a-Lago. And I brought with me just a bunch of lunatics, frankly, just very low IQ people, okay? We have Sleepy Joe Biden.
Hey, man, check out these sunnies I found.
Let me tell you something, Joe. You don't look good, okay? You look horrible, like a insane person.
Come on, man. I think I look groovy, man, like those airplane guys.
Okay, Joe, you don't look groovy at all, okay? Nobody even says that anymore. It makes you sound ancient, like you are. You look like you belong in a insane asylum, okay? Just keep your very cheap loser sunglasses that are probably some knockoff from China and continue building your very pathetic sandcastle. Now, I also brought with me Bill and crooked Hillary Clinton.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for inviting us to come along with you. People don't usually invite us anywhere because they can't stand Hillary.
Yeah, whatever. Thanks, I guess. You know, this beach, I thought it would be much better than this.
Such a nasty woman. I can tell you're still bitter that I beat you in the election very easily, by the way, and that nobody likes you, okay? I hope you're not insulted.
Hey, everybody, looky here. I found a coloring book.
That's not a coloring book, you lunatic. Those are crooked Hillary's emails, okay? She's trying to plant them on my beautiful beach. And frankly, it's a hoax, just like when they tried to send me to jail. And speaking of more pathetic women that I defeated very easily in the election, I brought Kooky Kamalama, Ding Dong, Harris also. You know, I'm undefeated against women. They couldn't beat me. They couldn't beat the Trump.
You listen here. The only reason that you beat me was that people were afraid to vote for a strong woman, which is what I am.
Kamala, nobody anywhere cared that you are a woman, okay? What they cared about was that you're stupid. Okay, they thought you were a nut job. You say you're a woman, but you don't even know what that word means.
Oh, ho. I know what that word means.
Bill, you're not helping here.
Oh, right. I'm sorry, Monica.
I don't have to define the word Donald because I have been unburdened by definitions. And once you're unburdened, you can truly unthunk the thoughts of others.
Kamala, you just never make any sense. Are you already drunk? You're just such a deranged lunatic.
Hey guys, I found an ice cream cone buried in the sand.
Joe, what the hell are you doing? Don't eat that. That's disgusting.
Now, let me tell you, Kamala, Hillary never lets me around pretty ladies anymore.
Oh, you think I'm a pretty lady? Doug only ever calls the nanny that.
Excuse me, what the hell is happening right now? Everybody needs to control yourselves before I call security. This is ridiculous. Sleepy Joe is passed out like a dog. Kamala is slamming Mai Tais. Crooked Hillary is throwing coconuts. Bill is putting the moves on Kamala. This is why the Clintons are never invited to anything. Everything is such a disaster. Stupid sandcastle. The only king on this beach is me.
Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. And here's your meme of the day, brought to you by FiveMind.com. Well, just like I've been saying over the last couple of months especially, it's happening. It's really frickin' happening. And it seems to be happening exactly how I said it would. Now, that's not to take a victory lap or pat myself on the back and pretend to be some sort of a genius, because let's be real, the prediction that I made is more so just the most obvious conclusion once the James Comey indictment dropped. It was only a matter of time before the dominoes started to fall. But if you guys watched my James Comey video, I'm sure you remember when I said the next names that need to follow are John Brennan, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page. And well, here we are. We've now got confirmation of investigations, subpoenas, and likely indictments coming out of Florida targeting none other than John Brennan, Peter Strzok, and Lisa Page. It seems like the whole gang of co-conspirators are now finally facing the consequences of their actions. It's freaking happening, folks. It's payback time. The revenge tour is well underway, and some people might have issues with that little piece of rhetoric there. But no, my friends, this is righteous revenge. This is justice. This is accountability for a clear criminal conspiracy against the President of the United States and, of course, the American people. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Okay, friends, so here it is.
Justice Department prosecutors have just issued a subpoena to former National Intelligence Director James Clapper, a longtime target of President Trump's, and former FBI officials Peter Strzok and Lisa Page have also received subpoenas. Sources telling CNN tonight the prosecutors are now moving to subpoena the former CIA Director John Brennan.
Well, Aaron, we know that this action from the Justice Department, it's not done yet. The subpoenas have gone out to people, including Lisa Page, Peter Strzok. You remember their names from the FBI investigation in 2016, 2017, and then intelligence chiefs who are either getting subpoenas or expecting to get subpoenas in the coming days. The former CIA Director, John Brennan, the former Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper. But sources are telling Evan Perez and I that it is dozens of subpoenas that are going out to people in the intelligence world from 2017, that all of these subpoenas are coming from investigators based in the Southern District of Florida. So that's where Mar-a-Lago is, but the connections are a little bit more tenuous to this investigation in 2016. That would be Crossfire Hurricane. That's what it was called within the FBI. And the other thing that we know based on our sources sources is what these subpoenas are asking for is that investigators want people, these former officials, intelligence officials in the federal government, to turn over documents from a pretty narrow window of time, July 2016 to February 2017, things like their text messages, their emails, their computer files, everything related to an intelligence community assessment report that was produced in 2017 that summed up essentially the basis for investigating Russian interference in the 2016 election, as well as the Trump campaign. It's something Donald Trump has wanted to see looked into again.
A federal grand jury has subpoenaed former CIA Director John Brennan, former FBI officials Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, as well as others. It is part of the Justice Department's investigation into the origins of the Trump-Russia probe.
And of course, while the left is acting all surprised, acting as if these indictments have come out of nowhere, they're surprising, or the president is indicting more of his political opponents, or they're acting completely outraged. This is surprising. These are the top intelligence figures and senior FBI top brass who pushed a false narrative post-2016 election, a narrative that was based off of evidence that they purposely manufactured and falsified to launch an investigation against President Trump, to spy on his campaign, then spy on his presidency, which they then tried to use to turn into criminal charges. They tried to impeach him, and then once the whole thing blew up in their face because obviously they couldn't deliver the facts, they ran a propaganda campaign to protect themselves and protect their leakers. This was political warfare engaged against the duly elected president of the United States, and they did it using your tax dollars. They did it while working for federal agencies, using the FBI and the CIA in a corrupt manner to undo an election. The mask is off. This little security state clique ran a propaganda effort, a psychological warfare campaign against the American people. And to add insult to injury, they did it all while claiming to be the guardians of democracy, as they were attempting to sabotage the electoral will of the American people. And now, well, they're about to face consequence. And of course, just as twisted as you might expect from the mainstream media, they seem less concerned with the actual criminal conspiracy and more concerned with defending these absolute deep state clowns. We got MSNBC running a sob story.
A series of subpoenas are being prepared to go out to all kinds of people, in particular asking about how the 2016 or the 2017 intelligence assessment on Russian election interference was prepared. And the thing that's deeply ironic about that to me is I covered the original John Durham investigation. And at the time I was covering the CIA, and so many CIA officers and intelligence officers had to get lawyers, had to pay for lawyers to go in and be interviewed by federal prosecutors about the work that they did in assembling this intelligence assessment. And at the end of the day, in 2023, John Durham released a massive report, and he did not criticize at all the preparation of this intelligence assessment. And this was a man appointed by Bill Barr. This was a Donald Trump appointed special counsel investigation that exhaustively examined all of this and the FBI's Crossfire Hurricane criminal investigation.